The opinions expressed on the radio program by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Genesis Radio, www.genesisradio.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
Good afternoon, folks. It's another Thoughtful Thursday, and you're on with Ron and Romane. Unfortunately, Romane couldn't be with us again today, or this evening, rather. Romane is going through some rough times right now, so folks, keep her in your thoughts and prayers. And with the Genesis family, we support her, and our thoughts and prayers are with her and her family. So today it's just me and Mastermind TP Square. We're going to talk about an issue that I think is extremely important for us as Americans, and I think we need to be cognizant of it. And lately, Donald Trump, who is the front runner for the Republican nomination for presidency, has been talking as if he's planning to become an autocrat or totalitarian. Now, let's be honest and fair, this did not start with Donald Trump. This country has been heading in that direction for some time, going back probably to, at least far back as the 1960s. But now it seems as if we may be ready. So my question today is America ready to become a totalitarian state? So for those who support Mr. Trump, it seems as if his rhetoric does not disturb them in any way, as if they're okay with the fact that, according to his own words, that he would weaponize, or should I say, overhaul the criminal justice system to go after his political opponents. Some might say, well, that's what happened to Donald Trump, that the Justice Department was weaponized against him. Well, folks, the reality is the justice system has been weaponized for some time. Typically, the people who receive the brunt of the weaponization are Black and brown people and the poor. And that's been going on for some time. In fact, it's been going on since this country was founded. Now, let's talk a little bit about the founding of this country. According to what we've learned in school, and supposedly what these people call the founding fathers stated, they said that this country was founded as a democracy. What we know now, that simply cannot be the case. If democracy is that all have the right to express themselves through the ballot, certainly this country was not a democracy at its founding. Only white men who were landowners were allowed to vote. It would not be until the passage of, I believe it was the 13th Amendment, that freed the slaves and allowed them, well, the 13th and 14th Amendments combined, one granting freedom, the other one granting citizenship, would slaves be allowed, or former slaves be allowed to vote. It would not be until 1920 that women, and I believe also Native Americans, were given access to the ballot. Well, we see how it's working out for Native Americans. So in terms of totalitarianism, we're going to talk about a case that just came up in Texas. There's a woman, 31-year-old woman by the name of Kate Cox. This woman is reportedly a Republican who is a staunch advocate of the pro-life movement. She does not agree with abortion. However, Mrs. Cox became pregnant. And at some point in her pregnancy, I'm not sure which trimester, she was told she is affected with something called trisomy. And what that is an extra chromosome that is developed in the fetus. And according to her doctors, the baby is not likely to live very long. In fact, They think the baby will die while it's in utero, while she's carrying the child. So based on that information, Ms. Cox went to court, Texas State Court, and she applied to have an abortion, had her lawyers present evidence that her life was in jeopardy because the fetus was not going to survive. And of course, if the baby dies while she's carrying the child, that will affect the life of the mother. And they also told it can reflect or affect rather her reproductive abilities moving forward. Well, the Texas lower court agreed and granted her permission to get an abortion. Well, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, he stepped in and he filed an injunction to stop the abortion, and he sent the case to Texas State Supreme Court. Supreme Court's decision was that this woman's case does not fit the criteria of the Texas abortion statute. Now, Texas has probably the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. According to the state of Texas, once a heartbeat is heard, you cannot have an abortion. Now, I want to open up the phone lines because I don't know if it's fair for two men, myself and TP, to sit here and talk about abortion. I think that this is an issue that women should have a great deal, not a great deal, but most of the input on. So the number here is 888-304-4401. Again, 888-304-4401. Now, getting back to Mrs. Cox in Texas. So she was granted an abortion by the lower court, denied by the Texas State Supreme Court. She, in the interim, while the case was being decided by the Supreme Court, left the state to have the abortion. Some states seek to prosecute women who leave their home state to have an abortion. Now, one, I don't know if we men should be talking about abortion. It's something that we should legislate. I think that is something that should be between the woman, the husband, boyfriend, family members, their doctor, and if they believe in higher power, then the higher power. It should not be something that is decided by a group of men in a courthouse, none of whom are doctors. If the doctors made a decision that this woman's life is at stake, how does a non-medical person make a decision say, no, your life is not at stake and we will not allow you to have an abortion? I think that it is crazy that in this country, that we say we are the beacon of democracy. Are we really? If women in the state of Texas are having to go through this to have an abortion, which is a reproductive right, especially in a case where you have a child that is non-viable, well, what's next? And for this young lady, 31 years old, well, what does the state of Texas have the right to her medical records? I mean, of course, they had to see some records to prove her case, but are they allowed to see all of her medical records? And if so, again, what's next? And does that give the court or other agencies, governmental agencies, the right to examine everybody's medical records? Well, let's think for a second. For those of my generation, mine and TP's, all of your medical records were in a chart. The chart was held at your doctor's office. In order for someone to look at that chart, you had to get a warrant. You had to have a good basis for wanting to see it, but you had to get a warrant, and it would be turned over to you. Now, everything is computerized. And let's be realistic. Hackers can pretty much get into anything. They can get and scrutinize your medical records. And of course, if they can do it, the government will certainly have access to it. So is that another thing that the government will be looking at? So, I mean, are we headed toward totalitarianism? And if we go, how close are we? I would say, folks, we're closer than you think. And it's not just the abortion issue. Going back to Texas again, Texas is banning books. So far, the state of Texas has banned 801 books. 801 books. Some of these books are classics. Some of these books have been read for generations. Now, all of a sudden, they are banned. And of course, again, in the state of Texas, Texas is trying to rewrite history as it relates to the transatlantic slave trade. Now, there's something I neglected to mention in talking about the case involving the woman who sought an abortion. Well, it was the Texas Attorney General who stepped in to block her from having an abortion. Now, here's something interesting about the Texas State Attorney General. His name is Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton has been under a state indictment since 2015. Since 2020, he's been under indictment by the FBI for securities fraud. How is it that a man who's under indictment for serious charges is allowed to step in and prevent this woman from having an abortion that could save her life? Now, I mean, realistically, if a police officer commits an offense, serious offense, that officer is suspended until there's outcome of either a criminal trial or a departmental trial. In this case, this dude who was almost impeached by the Texas State Republican Senate got through that by the skin of his teeth, but is still facing criminal charges. He's the one deciding this woman's welfare. Something is wrong, folks. Are we losing it in this country? And then again, this is the state that wants to rewrite history as it relates to the transatlantic slave trade, and they're banning books. Same thing down in Florida. Florida has, up to this point, banned 566 books. Now, if you look back at some of the old footage from Nazi Germany, you see where Joseph Goebbels had put together these bonfires, so to speak, and they would burn all books that were written by Jewish writers, or those that were, I guess, deemed offensive to the Nazi regime. And now we're doing it in America. Okay, we haven't burned the books yet, but we're not far from it. We're banning them. We in this country, or the people known as the Greatest Generation, went to war with Nazi Germany to stop this kind of thing from happening. And here now in America, we are the ones who are doing it. So I think it's very, very important that we pay close attention. And for Donald Trump, who's the leading candidate in the Republican Party, to be the next president of the United States, some of the stuff he said should set off alarm bells. And, to say that Trump is joking, Trump made it clear in his first run, I don't joke. And if he says something, typically he means it. So when he says that he's going to overhaul the justice system and go after his political opponents, yes, if given the chance to get into the White House again, there was no doubt in my mind that he would do it, especially since he believes it was being done to him, or is being done to him. But is that the kind of government we want to have? I mean, right now, America's government has got to be the laughingstock of the planet. If you think of some of the arguments that are going on down in Washington. Now, let's be realistic. These folks don't work a full year anyway. I think next week, or the end of this week, they're leaving for the Christmas break. So they have a week and a half before Christmas, and then won't be back into Washington until January. This is after their Thanksgiving break and their summer break. So these folks, I don't know, I'll say they conservatively work 7 months out of the year. And what exactly are they doing? Well, let's look. We have a senator from, I believe, the state of Alabama, Tommy Tuberville. who for more than a year held up the promotions in the military because the military would not ban abortions. You don't go after the Department of Justice, who sets the policies for the military. You prevent soldiers from getting a promotion. Maybe Mr. Tuberville isn't aware of the rising costs of things like food, milk, clothing, gas, taxes. Maybe he doesn't have to worry about that. But for folks in the military, they're not making a whole hell of a lot of money to start with. So they depend on those raises. So finally he decided, okay, after more than a year, I'll let the raises go forward. But you affect morale of the military while America is putting warships into the Red Sea. Is that even wise? Who comes up with this stuff? And then, you think about it, you're going back again to Nazi Germany. So, for somebody like Adolf Hitler, who's probably viewed as the most evil man ever to live, and arguably he is, even for Hitler, becoming a totalitarian autocrat, it didn't happen overnight. It was a process. And the process began with him eliminating his political rivals, something that Donald Trump said he was going to do. So in Germany, after Adolf Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany, the German parliamentary building, or the Reichstag, burned down. Now, when something like that happens, of course, people are afraid. There's so much lack of information or misinformation that flows. People are wondering, well, if they burn down the Reichstag, what's next? Will they burn down my house? Are we under attack? Well, Adolf Hitler stepped into that vacuum, and the rest is history. In this country, on 9/11, that was a cataclysmic event for a lot of us. Most of us had never experienced anything as disastrous as seeing the Twin Towers fall. Well, it was right after that, and this is it right in line with what Hitler did. When the Reichstag burned down, again, Hitler stepped into that void to say, I, Adolf Hitler, will protect you. He started arresting his political opponents, social Democrats, those from the Communist Party, and others. In America, after 9/11, we had a new set of laws called the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act, it infringes on many amendments or parts of the Constitution. The Constitution says you have to have a warrant to enter someone's house with the intent to search. Well, not according to the Patriot Act. We had things called no-knock warrants, and we see how that went. A young woman, Breonna Taylor, lost her life in Louisville, Kentucky.
On the bumpers.
Another one. These no-knock warrants, folks, dangerous. And here we are in America, we are right there. And I say it goes back to the 60s. Well, in the 1960s, the director of the FBI was J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover had something or launched a program called the Counterintelligence Program, or COINTELPRO. And he was surveilling groups in this country, domestic groups like the Black Panther Party, groups like the Nation of Islam, groups like the group that was pushing for independence for Puerto Rico, or the Puerto Rican independence movement, the American Indian movement, and of course, the Civil Rights movement. In fact, J. Edgar Hoover said the most dangerous man in America at that time was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, how was Dr. King dangerous? And of course, under this program, FBI agents used any means at their disposal to disrupt the activities of those groups. We're talking legal activities. And that went on for some time, even into the 1970s. There was the anti-war movement. Well, on the campus of Kent State University, National Guardsmen opened fire on unarmed college students, killing 4 of them. So, folks, we have been headed toward totalitarianism for some time. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And I know there are many other examples that I could call up, and that's something that you are aware of. But now it seems as if the country, at least a portion of it, may be ready to accept totalitarianism. In fact, when Trump was president, some people said that he should be president for life, which is something that was never thought of in this country. Well, I shouldn't say thought of, but it's not something that has been acted upon. Most people who occupy 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or the White House leave after their term has expired. Well, we all know what happened on January 6th, 2021. The country had one of those, I guess, inflection points where frustrations boiled over, and we saw the aftermath. We saw ordinary Americans, charging into the nation's capital, some with murderous intent, some armed. What would lead them to do that? Well, many people say that they were called there by former President Donald Trump. Some of these very same people have been prosecuted and are facing rather lengthy jail terms. Yet, the president who called them there is saying he's not guilty, he did nothing wrong, he has the right to freedom of speech. Now, freedom of speech is interesting because in America, do we have it? We are routinely, I guess what the word I'm looking for is restricted or censored on social media. Certain topics, if you speak about on social media, Facebook will shut you down and put you in what's called Facebook jail. Well, what about the right to freedom of speech, especially if it's non-offensive? If you look at some of these social media websites, you see half-naked women. That is okay. That you can do. But if you talk about a political point or a serious political point, and Facebook's management doesn't agree with it, they shut you down. They tell you some list of rules that somehow nudity complies with the rule, but speaking out for which is supposed to be a right, well, that doesn't fly. So if Facebook can censor us, can the government also? And have they been doing it? Is banning books a sort of or form of censorship? I would say it is. And then, since 9/11, we're probably the most surveilled people on the planet. You look around places like New York City, there are cameras everywhere. Traffic cameras, crime, so-called crime cameras, speed cameras, everywhere. Every few feet, you're being monitored as you enter New York City. Then you have our government has admitted that there are collection sites where they monitor emails, they monitor text messaging, they even monitor your bank accounts. How much comes in, how much goes out, and where's it going? Again, these are all things that were done under the Nazi regime, under Adolf Hitler. And we went, of course, to fight and lost hundreds of thousands of American men and women in that fight for freedom in Europe. And now freedom here is questioned. And it's not a foreign entity, it's our own government. And, people say, well, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans. Folks, it's both. Both of these, to say that they're opposite, they're really not, because they both get their same They get their money from the same people. If you look at Democratic donors and Republican donors, they're the same people. If there's two horses in a race and you bet on both of them, how do you lose? Think, folks. These people are bought and paid for, Republicans and Democrats. And that's why our system is so broken. That's why we're facing the possibility of totalitarianism, because people are so sick of the status quo, the career politicians who are ineffective and have been for years. So now we gave Donald Trump a try in 2016, and many people feel as if he was very successful. Well, that's a matter of debate. We're not going to get into that right now. And now some of those same people want to see Trump reelected, despite the fact that he's hinted, I shouldn't say hinted, he's made it clear in some of his most recent rallies and interviews, televised interviews, I might add, that he is leaning toward totalitarianism. Someone asked him, would you do that? And he said, only on the first day. If you're going to do something like that on the first day, why would you stop? If you have absolute power on day one, who surrenders absolute power on day two? Doesn't happen. There's a saying that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And, there are a lot of people who may have great intentions, but if you give people power over another people, eventually people will use that to their advantage. And there's been experiments where you took people, and one group was inmates, the other group were corrections officers. And it's supposed to be a controlled environment. Well, some of the inmates were told not to comply. And the corrections officers, who were people who are normally liberal-minded people, who on any other occasion would not resort to violence. But in this instance, they did. Experiment nearly got out of hand. And the same thing was said, can be said of pretty much every war. People take advantage. So I'm a student of World War II. And I look at it, I look at so many documentaries, I've read extensively on it. And it's because a lot of stuff that happened then is happening now. And folks, you need to be aware of that, because this will not be something that will happen overnight. It'll be a gradual process. But before you know it, when you go to say, I have rights, well, the government will tell you, no, you don't. When you voted for person X, you signed your rights away. When the government told you that we need you to surrender some of your rights in order to protect you from terrorists that lurk around every corner, the government told you they were going to take those rights, but they never promised to give them back, did they? And once the government takes your rights, oh, you're not getting those back. They didn't want you to have them in the first place. Just for an example, look at this recent labor or the strike that the auto workers had against the major auto companies or auto producers. Years ago, we're talking 70s, 80s, probably until, well, let's say 70s and 80s. The auto industry was some of the best paid people on the planet in terms of labor. Best paid, best benefits, pension, and possibly some other 401k or something like that. I'm not sure, because I'm not too sure about the benefits of the auto industry, but I know for many years, people will retire from the auto industry and do quite well. Well, at some point, the management of these companies decided too much money was going to the employees and not enough money going to the investors. So all of a sudden, pensions could no longer afford pensions. Benefits, healthcare, dental, so on and so forth, could no longer afford those. So over time, those benefits were lost. It was not until this most recent strike that crippled the auto industry did the employees get some of those rights or privileges back or benefits back. Now, I know people will say that, oh, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans. Again, it's both. But this whole thing started under a well-known Republican, Ronald Reagan. Part of Reaganomics, and the part that's not talked about, is the fact that it was Reagan that first talked about outsourcing. It was Reagan that went to war with labor unions. If you recall, during that time, there was a air traffic controller strike. And Ronald Reagan, he fired them all. Shortly thereafter, Greyhound went on strike, which is a private company. And the government stepped in and fired the Greyhound drivers. Now, how does the President of the United States fire public or not private employees? Well, he said that Greyhound travels interstate. And therefore, because it involves interstate commerce, he had the right to step in and fire them. All of these new Greyhound drivers and air traffic controllers, less money, less benefits. The money would again flow to the investors, the managers, the top people in companies. And I did some research. And I'm going to ask you this, TP.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time people got raises that were commensurate with the cost of living?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because today we were having that exact same conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the cost of living raises usually average around 6%.
Mm-hmm.
And companies are giving 1 to 3% max.
Right.
So, you know, how can people afford to save money, take a vacation, or experience the American dream when they're, you know, barely living paycheck to paycheck?
Absolutely. Well, the last time that raises were commensurate with the cost of living was 1973. 50 years ago, people would get raises, and you would actually see the raise in your paycheck. You'd be able to save money to send kids to college, to put money aside maybe for investing, and those sorts of things. Nowadays, it's not happening.
Not at all.
Our buying power continues to slide. The value of the dollar continues to slide. For the American people, they're suffering across the board. And now we're facing the possibility of our government shifting away from, I don't want to say democracy, because what we have is a form of democracy that is, I guess, malleable. Because when George W. Bush was president, he made a statement that essentially said, I'm the decider. And he said that the Constitution was a guideline. No, Mr. Bush, the Constitution was supposed to be, it was designed to be the law of the land. And I believe there's in the Bill of Rights, or in the preamble to the Constitution, no law shall be made that abridges the Constitution. The Constitution is it, the law of the land. And all laws have to be in line with the Constitution. But when you have a president that says, I am the decider, and it's just a guideline, well, that should also set off alarm bells. Because if one gets away with it, then the next person will push it a little bit further. In New York City, a guy by the name of Rudy Giuliani who was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, decided he was going to run for mayor and that he was going to restore what he called his city. Well, Rudy Giuliani is one of these guys, at least in my opinion. How can I put it? A little punk. Guy who probably never threw a punch in his life, but is the toughest talking guy you ever want to meet. So when he was running for for mayor in the city of New York, he made a lot of inflammatory statements, derogatory statements about then Mayor David Dinkins. And not just David Dinkins, but Black people in general. Well, he went on to serve 2 terms as the mayor. And after 9/11, he decided, you know what, I may need to stay on. Even though the statute of limitations, or rather term limitations, limited him to 2 terms, he asked incoming mayor Mike Bloomberg if he could stay on to finish the job.
How about that? And Bloomberg told him, no, sir.
That's right. Point of the matter is, you push the envelope. If you can get more than 8 years, well, then the next mayor may say, you know what? Why don't we change the law so that I can stay mayor for, say, 20 years? Well, again, that was something that was discussed when Trump was president. People said Trump for life. Well, Donald Trump is 77 years old, give or take. And, we're not dealing with somebody who's going to the gym on a regular. You used to see presidents who you find them running and the Secret Service running with them. You won't see Donald Trump running anywhere. In fact, they say that one of his favorite meals is from McDonald's. So a 77-year-old man whose diet consists of McDonald's and lack of exercise is not somebody who's going to be the president for life, or you might say a rather short life. Now, I'm not trying to say anything about Donald Trump, but the fact is, if that's how you're living your life without exercise and eating McDonald's, you're shortening your days. It is what it is.
I can't wait till I read the headline that he's gone.
Well, what? I think that, and let's be realistic, Donald Trump has a very, very good chance of winning re-election.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people,
believe it or not, this Israeli-Gaza thing was a good thing for Trump.
It was. It's really hurting Biden, right? Yeah. And Biden has no control whatsoever over Netanyahu. In fact, Netanyahu is dictating the terms to Biden. Well, so it's dragging out his numbers.
But the sad thing about it is because a couple of those swing states, the votes that he needs are Muslims.
And they're going to Trump.
It's not so much they're going to Trump. They're just going to stay home.
And that's going to hurt. Well, that's going to Trump, right?
Yeah, that's basically going to Trump. Yes.
Right. The reality is the Democrats have to rely on turnout, voter turnout.
Yep.
If there is massive voter turnout, the Democrats tend to do well. If people are disinterested or angry with the government, with the sitting president, and people sit at home, that tends to favor the Republicans. So because of that and other reasons, Donald Trump has a very real possibility, strong possibility, I would say, of winning re-election. And he already said what he's going to do. Now, look, if you think Donald Trump is joking, well, I don't know why he said he doesn't joke.
But you know what? The sad thing about it is, I think if he wins, we're going to have a civil war. If he wins. And I'll tell you why. I don't think the military is going to back him. I think there is going to be a revolt without military.
You know what I think? I think that already Trump has some people in his corner, some people that were there in his initial or first administration, people that are extremely right-wing radicals. Some of these folks, if Trump is elected, some of these folks will be put in key positions. And what they will do is they will find military officers who are willing to go along with Trump. And there are some like Michael Flynn, General Flynn, who supported Trump and who should have been in jail had not have been for Trump pardoning him. So yeah, there are some. Look, let's be realistic. We know from some time, and the FBI director Christopher Wray has been telling us that the most dangerous threat to America is not from foreign terrorism, but domestic terrorists.
That's right. That's right. Homegrown terrorists.
That's right. So we're talking about people who are in the military. We know that the Ku Klux Klan and other groups have people in the military who want to train and want to learn those tactics. And people have been put out of the military because they found swastikas in their rooms and things of that nature, tattoos on their body, which would indicate they're a member of a white supremacist organization. So yeah, it wouldn't be too hard for Trump to find and cherry pick people who will go along with his program. If it worked for Hitler, it can work for Trump. Because again, when Hitler was elected, Germany had a constitution, the Weimar Constitution, and they were a democratic society. Well, over time, away went the democracy, and in came Hitler, who became the Fuhrer, or the absolute leader of Germany. So I think that will happen, right? That he will find people, cherry pick people who will go along with his policies.
But do you see the way Germany operates today?
Yes.
You wouldn't believe that Hitler ever was there.
And you know something? That is a result of being bombed, right? Carpet bombed. The way Germany had went and bombed Poland, Czechoslovakia, France, and other places, the same thing happened to Germany, right? When that happens to you, it changes your way of thinking. You are less likely to want to go to war again when all of the people, most of the people have died. And even after war, people continue to die. Because in the aftermath of World War II, when the Russians came in, the Americans came in, the British and the French, what happened was they started not just putting these people on trial. Some of these former Nazis were just executed right on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these women, it was just crazy the amount of rapes that went on inside Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these women that were said to be involved with the Nazi program,
mm-hmm.
some of them, put up against the wall and shot. So even after the war was over, there was still reprisals against former Nazis. So I mean, yes, I do believe that America is right on the cusp of a civil war. And an autocratic society in this country is not going to help that. In fact, it will only drive people further apart. Those that support, like what we had before. You had two camps in this country. You had the Trumpers and the non-Trumpers. Well, now you're going to have the Trumpers who support Donald Trump and his totalitarian program. You're going to have the other folks who are like, no, this is America. So I could see those groups clashing. But I also see over time that the people who support Trump will, of course, eventually turn their back on him, because in a totalitarian state, you don't really have any friends. The people that you thought you could rely on. And again, if you go back to World War II, there were a number of people that were staunch allies of Adolf Hitler. Well, at some point, Hitler thought of them as being a threat to his power, and he had them executed. So, in fact, he had a number of people executed from groups like the Brown Shirts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that for Trump and also for Hitler, both of these guys, to say that Trump and Hitler were not both narcissists, I don't think that's a stretch. And in fact, to say that they both are somewhat paranoid, I don't think that's a stretch either. So if you are a staunch supporter of Trump, but at some point he begins to think that you're being disloyal, I can see the jails being filled with people who are just simply looked upon as being disloyal to Trump. And he talked about that in his first election, how much loyalty meant to him. And for those who were loyal to him, the general got a pardon. Roger Stone got a pardon. So these folks are still in Trump's camp. And if Trump were to win re-election, who is to say that he will not appoint Michael Flynn as the Joint Chiefs of Staff? So now you have a guy who supports you, who should have been in jail had it not been for you, in charge of the military.
Well, again, laughing stock.
Right.
Laughing stock of the world.
We are.
And I got to tell you, man, I believe that all those allies that we have here in this country,
right,
are going to get together and say, we can't allow this to happen. He might make it in there, but trust me, they're going to band together. And guess what?
Mm-hmm.
As tiny as Israel is, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got the best spy network in the world.
Absolutely.
They got the best assassins in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And intelligence in the world.
Now that's why it's hard to believe that they did not know that Hamas was going to, launch an attack on them. Now they said they knew for a year.
Well, you know what? I think that there's a bigger picture to all that, because you see how they are now late in the West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was already part of the plan.
Well, absolutely.
And the West Bank and what they do on the West Bank and Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
They were literally murdering people in the West Bank,
mm-hmm.
taking their land.
Right.
They want all the land for themselves.
Well, Netanyahu said that, right? He said that, before he leaves office, he was going to take the land, and then he was going to bomb Iran. So the land portion of it is pretty much locked up. It started in northern Gaza, and they were told to go south for safety. Mm-hmm. Well, now they're bombing southern Gaza. And where are they supposed to go?
They're going to wipe the people out.
Yes, they are. And he's using Hamas to do it. Now, I don't know if Hamas even exists, because I do know, right, that a lot of the terrorist organizations like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, all of them have one thing in common: CIA backing, CIA funding. So an organization like Hamas, who backs them? They claim it is Iran.
Mm-hmm.
They claim it's Iran, but I don't think so. I think that Hamas may be just like Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and ISIS, set up by maybe Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, and it gives Netanyahu now a reason to go into Gaza, clear the land, take it, to have more space for Jewish settlements, and at some point near the end of this fight, to target Iran, because everyone is saying that Iran is behind Hamas.
But I say this here, the pressure is getting on Biden.
Oh yeah,
the pressure's on him, right? He's trying to save face, but now you got a lot of Jewish organizations right here in America saying ceasefire, right? We don't want this to happen in the name of Judaism. See, they, Zionists is a whole nother thing. You know what I'm saying? And they saying that's not us. We don't want that, right? But you want our votes. You want us to vote for you, right? You're gonna have to stop funding Israel with these weapons,
which is a problem.
You know what I mean? You can't serve two masters.
See, here's the problem with Biden. Biden is caught between a rock and hard place. Now, today, he kind of soft pedaled it by saying, listen, Benjamin, you're losing the support of the world. The world opinion is turning against Israel. listen, the world's opinion has turned against Israel from the start of this conflict. People see what's going on when the internet is available in the Gaza area. Images come out, and it is clear who's terrorizing who right now. So for Biden to tell Netanyahu, look, we're going to cut off funding. If that were to happen, I can guarantee you America's economy would tank. Right now, we're posting records. I think the Dow hit 37,000 yesterday. Mm-hmm. Never been that high before. Mm-hmm. But I guarantee you, if there was any talk of cutting off funding for Israel, especially at this time, I guarantee you the economy will tank. And that will push things definitely in favor of Trump. So Trump is in a very unique position, right? He's got a band of followers, and who knows how many that may be, that will support him. If he went crazy while in the White House and killed Melania, they would have just said, yeah, she deserved it anyway, and just reelected him. They don't care what he does. They don't care about his past. They don't care about, criminal indictment. They don't care if he's indicted or not indicted, but if he's convicted, they might go bust him out of jail, right? Because this is the person that they believe is going to lead them to the promised land, Donald Trump and nobody else. So for Biden, the war, or this alleged war in Israel, is a problem. The fact that the Republicans have been able to successfully say the man is too old is a problem. The fact that he appears to stumble at times, with his thinking and his speech is a serious problem. The man is going to be probably 84 before he finishes his next term in office. So there are a number of things against Mr. Biden, right? And those things are only going to help Trump. And again, this is a man that is talking about totalitarianism. Mm. So this is a very critical time in America. And while people are preparing for the arrival of Santa Claus, I think you need to sit down and listen to what Trump is saying. Listen to what is being said about this woman who, fortunately for her, was able to get an abortion. Had to leave her home state to get this abortion. But maybe you don't think it applies to you right now. But what about later? What about these women who are raped? I don't know if Texas has an exception for that. What about these women, right, who get pregnant and have a medical condition that prevents them from carrying a baby to full term and it threatens their life? Or if a woman has a simple unwanted pregnancy, right? She simply cannot afford to have another child. What then? We have a group of men, predominantly men, who are telling women, this is what you're going to do. We're going to dictate to you what you're going to do with your bodies. And if they'll do that to women, what will they do to men?
Well, that's the only thing that the Republicans have to worry about. What women are going to vote on in regards to that abortion issue.
Well, that abortion issue is killing the Republicans. Just recently, in a red state like Kentucky, a Democrat won, re-elected as governor. In Ohio, another state, staunchly Republican, when they put abortion on the ballot, or is it a right in Ohio, overwhelmingly it won, right? It passed. So that's a major problem for Trump. Now, Trump has said, I guess we was running for president in 2016, that he thought that the ban should be at about, I think he said 16 weeks or so, which is 4 months. Realistically, again, I don't know if this is something that we should be legislating, because circumstances change for women, for families.
Yes.
So it's like it's being criminalized, because people say that it's murder. Yet we'll bomb people who pose no threat to us. That's not murder. But if a woman has an unwanted pregnancy, that's killing a child. We never said about killing the children in Iran. We never said anything about killing the children in Libya or Yemen. Never said anything about killing the children in Haiti, in parts of Africa. We don't say nothing about killing them.
Mm-hmm.
But do not kill a baby in this country. And again, I can't say that I'm pro-life. Can't say that I'm anti-abortion. I am anti-hypocrisy. So if you're going to tell these women to have these children, but yet when these children are born, you don't want to provide funding for them, for like WIC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vital programs, education. America's ranking 125th now. Industrialized nations, 125th. So you want to tell these women to have the kids, but after the child is born, now you tell her you're on your own. There is no funding to help you raise this child. You're struggling already, you're going to struggle some more.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to make ends meet? That's not our problem. You decided to have a baby. Even though we force you to do it, it's your responsibility to raise this child, to see that they get a decent education, to see that there's food on the table. Don't we have enough children that are abused on this planet?
That's right.
But you know what? This is the mentality. And this is what I mean about totalitarianism. That may be where we're headed, where we're going to dictate to people exactly what you're going to do in your homes. So, folks, we are getting real close to that hour. And I'm just so glad that we can talk about that, because I think it's a very, very serious issue, not just for women. I think there's implications for all of us. Because over the years, just think back of all the laws that have been enacted over the years that have negatively affected the American family. And I mean, look, I grew up, I was one of those people that I got spanked. Now, this country will put you in jail for disciplining your children. Something is wrong here in America because our children are out of control, our government's out of control, and how do we rein them in? So, folks, this is something we need to continue to talk about, because we're at the point where an election is just 1 year away. And a lot is going to happen in this coming year to try to sway your vote one way or the other. But just understand that what's really at stake? Our freedom. And also, as TP said, Civil War, yeah. When the Civil War started in 1861, that war was fought over one issue. People try to say it was states' rights. States' rights to do what? States' right to maintain slaves. So the issue of that time for that generation was slavery. Now, 150 some odd years later, there are multiple issues that are dividing this country. And what's happening is these issues are bubbling up, and they're going to rise to the surface again. And eventually there will be a clash. We've seen it down in Charlottesville, Virginia, when the alt-right movement showed up down there. A young woman died. We've seen these clashes between Antifa and others. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Things are going to get a lot worse. The level of violence will increase, because America's probably the most violent society on the planet. We kill more people here than you will find in an average war on the front. So just keep that in mind, folks. We'll see you again next Thursday right here with Ron and Romane. Y'all have a good night.